I'm 45, and if you're in your 30s, listen closely. Because Carl Jung would tell you that the next decade isn't just about getting older. It's about meeting the part of yourself you've spent years avoiding. The shadow. The habits that live in your unconscious and quietly decide what your body looks like, who you love, and whether you wake up fulfilled or restless. Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So this isn't a list of fitness tips, it's a map through the unseen forces shaping every choice you'll make from now on. Before we dive in, take a second to subscribe. This channel is all about the deeper layers of psychology, Carl Jung, the shadow, the unconscious, the kind of ideas that change how you see yourself. If that's the journey you're on, hit subscribe now so you don't miss what's coming next. When I hit 40, I started noticing two kinds of people. Those who tended to their bodies and those who let time do the tending for them. It's subtle at first, a softness in the shoulders, a slower climb up the stairs. Then it becomes a language. Wrinkles, stiffness, weight gain, fatigue. Carl Jung would say the body carries the unconscious. It tells the truth even when the mind lies. Think about that. Every late-night snack, every skipped workout, every "I'll start next week" isn't just about willpower. It's a symbol. Your body is speaking in images the way dreams do. The midnight craving might be loneliness. The constant tiredness might be resentment. A sore back can be a story of years spent carrying a life you don't actually want. Ignore it, and you don't just lose muscle, you lose dialogue with the part of you that wants to live. Science says we lose 3 to 8% of muscle every decade after 30. Jung says neglecting the body is neglecting the soul. To him, the shadow isn't only the dark impulses you hide, it's also the life force you refuse to claim. When you let your body decay out of convenience, you're not being neutral. You're siding with entropy. You're letting the unconscious win. This is why lifting weights isn't vanity. It's individuation in motion. The conscious ego meeting resistance, adapting, growing stronger. Every rep is a confrontation with limitation. The bar doesn't care about excuses. It reflects you back to yourself. And in that reflection, something alchemical happens. The scattered fragments of the self begin to gather. The inner and outer worlds start to match. Better to be the oldest person in the weight room than the youngest in the nursing home. That's not just health advice. It's a psychological statement. I refuse to let the unconscious run this show. You don't have to be a bodybuilder. A simple, consistent ritual, walking, stretching, lifting, anything that demands presence, becomes a way of saying, I see the shadow. I respect it. But I will not be devoured by it. And here's the twist Jung would love. The same principle that protects your muscles will protect your relationships. Because how you treat the body is rehearsal for how you treat the people you love. Ignore signals, skip the hard work, and everything starts to break down. Listen, respond, build strength, and connection deepens. The body is where the unconscious knocks first. Answer the door. Circadian nutrition, meal timing, sleep. All those boring habits, the ones that feel too small to matter, too repetitive to be interesting. Jung would call them rituals of alignment. Your psyche craves rhythm the way a heart craves a beat. When you eat at consistent times, when you let darkness be dark and morning be morning, you're not just following a wellness trend, you're signaling to the unconscious. I'm listening. I belong to something larger than my mood swings or my inbox. I'm in dialogue with nature, not at war with it. Think about how a child calms down when rocked, or how a drum circle can pull strangers into the same pulse. That's not just culture, that's biology echoing psychology. Your nervous system is built on pattern, and when you ignore it, skipping meals, scrolling at 2 a.m., living in a blur of caffeine and artificial light, you fracture the bridge between conscious and unconscious. The body stops trusting the mind. Dreams dry up. The world starts to feel flat and strangely hostile. Jung believed that sleep is not mere rest. It's a nightly descent into the collective unconscious, a journey back to the well of symbols and images that keep the ego from believing it's the whole story. Skip it and you cut off the very dream world that feeds insight. You might stay awake to get more done, but you're really stealing from tomorrow's wisdom. 7 to 9 hours isn't just longevity, it's access. Access to the strange theater where your shadow speaks in metaphors. Access to the archetypes that whisper solutions your waking mind can't invent. Those bizarre dreams, the ones you dismiss as random, they're the psyche's way of stitching together the chaos of the day. Ignore them long enough, and the unconscious will find other ways to get your attention. Anxiety, illness, sudden mood swings. Even meal timing carries psychological weight. Eating breakfast at dawn, pausing for real lunches, closing the kitchen when night falls. These are quiet vows to stay in step with the Earth's clock instead of the dopamine loop of late-night snacks. They're a declaration. My life runs on something older than algorithms. So when you keep a bedtime, when you dim the lights and let the moon take over, you're not just being disciplined. You're practicing individuation. You're letting the deeper layers of the self rise and fall with the same rhythm as tides and seasons. And in that rhythm, something inside you exhales. Everyone says don't judge a book by its cover, but Jung invented the term persona to describe the mask we wear for society. Care for your appearance, not to impress strangers, but to consciously shape the mask instead of being owned by it. A haircut, a clean shirt, a strong body, these are signals that your ego is steering the persona, not hiding behind it. But here's the trap. If you worship the mask, you stay hollow. Care for the outer form while listening for the inner voice. That tension, the dance between what the world sees and who you really are, is the heart of individuation. Every generation meets a new tool that feels dangerous. For me, it was the internet. Now it's AI. Jung would call technology a trickster archetype, chaotic, playful, capable of saving or destroying depending on how conscious you are. Reject it and you stagnate. Get lost in it and you become its puppet. The task is integration. Use the tool, stay awake. Jung used libido to mean psychic energy, not just sex. Every click on explicit content drains not only your focus, but your creative life force. When you redirect that energy into skill, art, or self-development, you're doing more than quitting a habit. You're performing alchemy. You're turning raw instinct into gold. Walking sounds simple. Jung walked every day around Lake Zurich to think, to let symbols rise. Movement invites insight. When you're stressed, angry, or blocked, a long walk is a conversation between conscious and unconscious. Every step says, I'm willing to meet myself. Money is a great servant, a terrible master. Everyone knows that line, but Jung would push it further. He'd say money is never just money, it's projection. It's the psychic energy we attach to power, safety, love, and status, all condensed into numbers on a screen. That's why it never feels neutral. It always carries a charge: desire, fear, envy, pride. Chasing status through money is the fastest way to feed the persona, the mask we build to survive society. The Rolex, the luxury car, the carefully curated vacation photos. These aren't just purchases, they're costumes. They keep the persona inflated while the deeper self withers from neglect. Jung would warn that when you worship symbols of success, you trade individuation for imitation. You become a character in someone else's myth. This doesn't mean money is evil. Quite the opposite. Money, like fire, is neutral until you hand it authority. Used consciously, it's a tool for freedom. Clear your debts, build skills, buy time. These are not just financial moves, they're psychological revolutions. Every dollar saved is a vote for inner authority. Every skill learned is a step away from dependency on a system that profits from your unconscious spending. Think about what real wealth looks like. The ability to walk away from a toxic job, to choose projects because they're meaningful, to wake up without dread because the rent is paid. That is sovereignty. That is the self quietly reclaiming power from the persona. Jung might call this process the withdrawal of projection. You stop projecting your hunger for significance onto things. You start recognizing that freedom, not applause, is the ultimate currency. It's the difference between a life spent polishing masks and a life spent carving a soul. So by all means, earn, invest, create. Just remember, if money is your servant, it will build a kingdom for yourself. If it becomes your master, it will build a prison for your persona. Here's where Jung gets radical. He believed what you call reality is filtered through your personal unconscious. Two people, same event, two different worlds. Change the lens, change the life. Cognitive science agrees, but Jung got there first. Your thoughts create beliefs. Beliefs create actions. Actions create reality. If you don't train perception, you'll live inside someone else's story. Thomas Edison called it experimentation. Jung called it individuation, the lifelong process of becoming whole. Both are saying the same thing in different languages. Progress is a dialogue with the unknown. Every failed attempt is not just a misstep, it's a coded message from the unconscious. The psyche speaks through detours, dead ends, and small humiliations. Each mistake is the shadow offering information you couldn't access in comfort. That's why iteration matters more than perfection. The faster you experiment, the faster you meet the parts of yourself that were hiding behind fear. A rejected idea, a botched project, an awkward first draft. These aren't verdicts, they're invitations. They say, here's a piece of the self you haven't integrated yet. Set the goal, then forget the goal. Focus on the process. Show up, test, adjust, repeat. When the ego stops obsessing over the summit, the unconscious has room to reveal unexpected paths. Synchronicities appear. New symbols emerge in dreams. Life stops being a straight climb and starts feeling like a living conversation. Because happiness isn't in the summit, it's in the climb. Or as Jung might phrase it, the self is found in the journey, never the destination. The goal is only a magnet. Its real purpose is to pull you into motion so the deeper transformation can unfold. Every iteration, every so-called failure, is alchemy, turning raw experience into the gold of self-knowledge. Parents, ex-lovers, old friends, yourself. Jung saw resentment as psychic poison. To forgive is not to excuse, it's to reclaim energy trapped in the past. You don't have to invite everyone back into your life. You just have to stop letting them live rent-free in your unconscious. Individuation doesn't happen in isolation. Surround yourself with people whose lives reflect the reality you're trying to build. If you're always the smartest in the room, your ego is safe, but your soul is starving. Seek rooms that humble you. Growth by osmosis. Everyone wants the hack. Jung knew the psyche hates shortcuts. Real transformation takes time because it's rewriting the unconscious. Quick fixes skip the inner work and collapse under their own weight. Choose the long path. It's paradoxically the fastest way. What you do, who you love, where you live. These are not logistics, they're destiny choices. Jung believed these outer decisions mirror inner archetypes. Choose with awareness and you align with your deeper self. Choose unconsciously and you inherit someone else's script. Goal setting, wealth building, health rituals. They all point to one thing, becoming the person who can hold the life you say you want. Jung called this individuation, the slow, deliberate becoming of a whole human being. Not perfect, whole. The shadow integrated, the persona worn lightly, the self finally met. And here's the kicker. It's never too late. Not at 30, not at 45, not at 70. The unconscious waits patiently for you to notice. Start now, and a year from today, you won't just look different, you'll be different. Don't take my word for any of this. As Jung would insist, the shoe that fits one person pinches another. Test it in your own life. Lift the weights. Track the dreams. Walk until the symbols start speaking. Absorb what is useful. Reject what is useless. And most important, meet the stranger inside you before time does it for you. I'd love to hear how this lands for you. Which part of Jung's philosophy hit the hardest? Share your thoughts or even a personal story in the comments. I read everyone, and your insight might be exactly what someone else here needs to hear.